Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on whichever part of the world you are. Friends, welcome back to the webinar series from the Eastern India Lions Leadership Academy. You will remember that we started this academy, which is web-based platform for the only purpose of initiating conversations and discussions between the lions of the world. Technology makes it possible today, and we had thought this is time to leverage technology to bring the lions of the world together to share their success stories and to continue to enhance their knowledge and, more importantly, continue to inspire each other with what they are doing. So, friends, we had discontinued these webinars for some time because we believed that they were catching up in each of the constitutional areas, maybe within the areas themselves. But we have received good response and requests from across the world that they want to keep this international experience on. So we are starting this series again today. And we are extremely obliged that we have an accomplished panel with us today. We have past International Director Patty Hill from Canada. We have PID Cliff Haywood from New Zealand, PDG Wendy Kane from the United States, and past District Governor Rajinder Singh Sembi from Kenya, Africa. And together with me, as my co-host, I have PID Sangeeta Jatia. We have attendees from almost all constitutional areas. Maybe we'll give you a little breakup towards the end of the webinar. A few ground rules. We are going through the presentations by the speakers, by the presenters, that's the panelists, in the earlier part of the webinar. But we hope to be keeping, and we will keep sufficient time to take your questions and your comments. So whenever towards the end you wish to ask a question, and we really desire it to be more of a question because we cannot really accommodate all comments, you may raise your hand. And by now, I believe we are all used to the webinar protocols. You would know which button to press so that we can see your hand raised on our panel and invite you to ask the question. If the question is addressed to a particular speaker, that's a particular panelist, the panelist will take it, or else we will allocate it to one of the panelists. So friends, thank you very much, and let's get the ball rolling with past International Director Cliff Haywood.
Thank you, past International Director AP Singh. It is great to be with you all this morning from down under here in New Zealand. So the question is asked, why do we need icebreakers for the facilitation of good meetings within our clubs and within our training environment? So I would ask you to invite the next slide to appear, please, AP. I have analyzed there are 6 main reasons why we like to have good, clean icebreakers in our meetings. The first is for creating a positive atmosphere. Secondly, to motivate people. Thirdly, to make you think outside the box and allow the group to get to know each other, break down social barriers, and help people to relax. Let's take these one at a time. First slide, please. In this world today of high pressure and high meetings attendance, icebreakers help lighten the mood and create a general feeling of well-being among the group. This leads to more engagement by the participants. Thank you, AP. Meetings can be tense, as you all know. They can deal with stressful topics, but an icebreaker can cut through the tension, bring everybody closer together, and have them thinking on the same plan. Thank you. By getting the group to work together and to see each other as familiar but unique individuals, there is less separation. This leads us to listening to other people's points of view and thinking outside the box. Icebreakers are fun and inject a needed energy into the group. With that comes the inherent motivation to tackle the work in hand. Thank you. Icebreakers work like brainstorming by getting the group to bond by bouncing ideas off one another and think more creatively. This is most important if we are to have our clubs meeting and thinking more positively. Icebreakers will really ways to get to know more about the people you work with on a personal level, which builds relationships and helps to boost productivity. I'd now like to pass over to PDG Wendy Kane to continue this webinar. Wendy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pastor National Director Cliff. I'm going to share some example icebreakers that you can use to help engage the Lions in your meetings. And I'll be doing that by sharing two different types of icebreakers, some shorter ones and longer ones, but primarily focused here on how you can get to know your Lions Club members better. So I do have them broken down by duration, but you can also adjust each of these activities to serve a variety of lengths that you might have available in your meeting agenda. The shorter icebreakers will be less than 5 minutes, and I think are a great way to either involve your club's tail twister to help lead these icebreakers, or potentially new members to either lead them or help feature them so that the rest of the members can get to know them. So the first example I'd like to share is a shared characteristics icebreaker where whoever is leading the portion of the exercise would have members stand up if they meet certain characteristics. And that gives an opportunity for others in the room to see who they share their characteristic with. For example, the leader might ask, if you are born in the month of August, please stand up. Or if you are left-handed, please stand up. Or you can even see some of the characteristics that I'll share for some of these other icebreakers could also be used for this activity. But I would recommend just doing a couple of these at a time in the course of a meeting to help Lions connect. This is something that you can do in a very short duration over multiple meetings, or have something at each meeting if you wish. Another short icebreaker is to provide a member spotlight, where the membership of the meeting gets to know more about a single member. This will probably be more beneficial if it's like your club meeting where the same members are attending rather than a special purpose meeting that you might have. What I would recommend if doing that, because some people don't know what to say about themselves or other people say way too much, is to provide a standard set of questions that they can use to guide the types of information that they would share, and then give them an opportunity to say something unique that maybe isn't covered in the questions. You could do this and have the member speak about themselves, or you may wish to have another member introduce them by sharing their responses. Another example of short icebreakers that works really well are what I call table shares. But if you have a small group of people, you may want to share with everyone in the group rather than just at the table. But the table size does help manage the duration of this exercise. And again, you would likely only want to do one of these at each meeting to help people get to know one another. And really the types of things that you ask is limited to your imagination. So you might ask everyone around the table to share their favorite color and why that's the case, or their favorite food or animal, if for some reason it's not a lion. They might share 3 hobbies or interests that they have outside Lionism, and that way you have a chance to see ways that you might connect with others. Or a personal win. That's an uplifting way to share and have members interact of what's happened positively since the last meeting. Or you could go out on a limb and say, if you were stranded on an island, what one item would you need to have with you? And see what comes up. You can go ahead and advance the slide. Thank you. For some of the longer icebreakers, again, you'll need to plan ahead for sufficient time on the meeting agenda, or coordinate so that you have that time available, and monitor your time accordingly, because some of these can get extensive if you don't keep track of the time. The 2 truths and a lie exercise is one that I have done several times, and it always amazes me the types of things you learn about people. So the way we've done this is we give everyone a card and ask them to write down 2 truths and a lie about themselves. And this actually is almost the longer part of the exercise because people have a tough time coming up with those items. But then you'll collect up the cards and one by one read a card. And we've done it both ways. Usually we do say who the person is on the front end. We read the 3 items and the rest of the members or participants have to guess which item is the lie. And like I said, we've learned some pretty amazing things about the interests and experiences that our Lions members have had. Another way that you could modify this particular exercise is to collect up all the cards and then maybe just do 1 or 2 of them at each club meeting over time. And so you will have already done the prep work, but then use that as a fun way to interact with the Lions at the beginning or at the end of a club meeting. And the last exercise or icebreaker that I'd like to share is a treasure hunt. And I'll show an example of what this looks like in a moment. But the purpose is for Lions to get up and move around and interact with other Lions to find the description, to find Lions that match a description that's in this box of this treasure hunt and have them autograph it. And ideally, you want them to carry on a conversation, get to know one another better rather than just focusing on filling in the box, but that's still effective as well. The rules that we've used is generally a Lion can only sign in one box, so you can't have one person that fills multiple characteristics. And if we have a large treasure hunt exercise, we usually let the Lion that's participating, there's one box that they can fill in for themselves. We've done this a couple of different ways with and without recognition. If you do want to consider recognizing Lions who complete the form, then you would need to think about whether you want to recognize everyone that does that or have them submit their forms and select a random winner. But it's gotten a lot of energy in a couple of our events that we've used this. So a couple of tips, and then I'll show you the example. You can go ahead and advance the slide. So depending on the meeting purpose and or your participants, you might want to use either Lions characteristics or personal interests. And again, it also depends on the number of participants there. You want to make sure that your Lions can be successful and that every block could be completed. So depending on the size of your group may depend on the size of the treasure hunt that you want to do. Be creative with the things that you're asking them to find out about one another. And if it isn't something that you're just doing in a short duration, make sure that you have a deadline. We've successfully used this activity at a multiple district leadership weekend for many years. And that particular event usually has between 1/3 and 1/2 of the participants are first-time attendees. So it is a great way for them to get to know each other as well as the seasoned Lions who attend. You can go ahead and advance the slide and I'll pick up the deadline aspect as I talk about the slide. For that particular event, we usually use a full sheet of boxes with either 20 or 24 boxes. Actually, I think there's 25 because we go 5 across and 5 down. And the Lions have over a day to walk around in the free time in between sessions or meals to meet people to fill it out. But we do have a deadline for when it needs to be submitted to be eligible for the prize. And so these are a couple examples. The first 2 rows are types of characteristics you might want to ask about if you're focused on Lions experience. The second 2 rows I included are focused on just personal characteristics or interests that you might want to ask or have people try to find out. Again, you can be creative as you want with this on the types of things that you ask them to find and how many characteristics you have. This could also be modified for a club meeting, and maybe you just have a row of 3 or 4 boxes at the bottom of your meeting agenda if you print out your agendas for each club meeting, and your Lions have an opportunity to interact before or after the club meeting to get those couple of boxes filled in and learn more about their Lions members. So again, a lot of opportunities to modify the approaches here that helps lions get up, move around, the other purposes that Pastor National Director Cliff mentioned about the benefits of icebreaker can be achieved through many of these activities, and you can customize it to make them your own. All right, I'm going to pass the baton to past District Governor Rajinder Sembi.
Thank you very much, Wendy. I can see that Cliff has introduced about icebreakers, and icebreakers are a great tool, and we must use them properly in meetings that we have to make our club meetings fun. And as Cliff had mentioned before, we use icebreakers to have a positive atmosphere, because when people are comfortable, they will open up, they will discuss, they will share ideas. And when people share ideas, they also become motivated. So using a good icebreaker can first of all create a positive atmosphere, which can lead to motivation, which will get more results coming out from the meeting that you're in. Most importantly, it relaxes. We all are very busy. We come to meetings, we are tense. We want the meeting to be over, but when you're relaxed, you can start to think about the points. And icebreakers actually make people relax. And in certain types of meetings, you will also need to get acquainted with people who you have not seen before. Human nature dictates that when we meet new people, we somehow tend to shy off. We try to find our barriers. And icebreakers are an excellent way of interacting together, as described in the examples that Wendy gave to you just a moment ago. Once you start to get to know each other, a positive atmosphere is created. When a positive atmosphere is created, motivation becomes higher, you're relaxed, and you will get more productive meetings. But it's very important to understand that we must understand the types of meetings that are available in our Lionistic work that we do. And you can see that there are 6 general types of meetings that we can break our meetings into. And maybe some of these will be shared within the meeting, or maybe 2 or 3 of them. But it's very important that we use the right type of icebreaker in the right type of meeting. For example, if we take a status update meeting, by nature of what it says, a status update, it says that we are already people who are unknown to each other. Do we really need an icebreaker here? Yes, we do. What type of icebreaker? Does it have to be a long icebreaker or a short icebreaker? And this is why Wendy went through a number of examples of different types of icebreakers that are available. We must use the right icebreaker at the right in the right type of meeting. And of course, an icebreaker is used not just to create harmony. You can also have it as a means to an end, to get people to start thinking about the subject matter in the meeting itself. And the icebreaker can be used to elicit responses for which you can utilize later within the meeting. So in a status update meeting, there's a lot of decision making that takes place. You're challenging the process. So here you need a relaxed atmosphere. So we need to choose the right type of icebreaker. In information sharing meetings, here these are actually presentations and information is shared to people. The primary goal of this meeting is for speakers to share information with the attendees. Do we need an icebreaker here? Yes, it's possible, because this is where you can connect as a presenter to the people who you are actually passing this information to. In decision-making meetings, there's a lot of brainstorming that is required. And again, as I mentioned before, you need a positive atmosphere. You need motivation, so people contribute towards this. In decision-making meetings, there's a lot of brainstorming that is required, and an icebreaker can work very well to make sure that people bond together and get acquainted. As we go on, you can see the 6 different types of icebreakers which are there, 6 different types of meetings. And I would now like to hand over to Patty, who will now take you through the next part of the presentation. Patty?
Good day, everyone. Thank you for that intro from Cliff and Wendy and pulling it together there from Rajinder. When I was thinking about how we can purposefully use these sorts of icebreakers, it occurred to me that most of you who've joined us on this webinar today take on a leadership role in your club or your district or your multiple district. Your role may be that of a tail twister or a club executive member or a committee chairperson. And so you have to think a little bit more about not just the agenda and the outcomes of the meeting that you want, but how you're creating a meeting atmosphere. And focusing first here on our club meetings, as past District Governor Rajinder said, many times our club meetings need to accomplish several purposes: updates, decision making, and some problem solving. But when you come to a meeting, you as a Lions leader, you need to have in your mind the agenda. What is your purpose when you're planning your icebreaker? And we know that our Lions come to the meetings for several reasons. We're going to conduct the business of our club. That's why we have these meetings. But we have members who come because the socializing is so important to them. They are there to socialize. We have other members who come because they've got reports to give. They want to inform. And we have members who come to network with friends, with business partners, with other leaders in their community. They all have their agenda, the reason they've come to the meeting. So we need to be respectful and meet everyone's needs. Part of that, as Wendy laid out so nicely, is respecting the time that we have during a club meeting. It's very different from the amount of time that you have at a multiple district or meeting or district cabinet meeting. How much time can you take from your club meeting? So selecting the icebreaker to meet your needs, whether that's the need to help them think creatively, the need to build relationships stronger, the need to motivate your members. When you select that, you want to meet your needs, but you also want to leave the time that the Lions feel their needs have been met. No one wants to go to a meeting where the icebreaker takes an hour and the entire meeting was only allocated an hour and a half. So the matching up of the needs and the purposes is very important. If we respect the time needed for each purpose, then the Lions will have a good meeting. When we think about the purpose to socialize, sometimes within our club meetings, depending on your seating arrangement or the ongoing committee work, we have little cliques, little clubs within the club that can form. And they form quite strong social bonds, but sometimes they're limited to those cliques. Often our new members who've just joined don't feel that they can break into those cliques, and they're socializing on the edge of the club, feeling a bit like an outsider. So that's a perfect time to introduce a mixer, an icebreaker that will help reorganize. Sometimes it's as simple as having people use one of those shared characteristics that Wendy mentioned. You know, having everybody sit at a table according to their date of birth. You know, if you were born in the spring, you'll be seated here. If you were born in the winter, you can be seated somewhere else. And you can create new opportunities for people to socialize that way. Sometimes, though, we need to really focus on the purpose of informing. And in a club meeting, working with your tail twister, or if you have an officer who's responsible for Lions information, you can use those quick printed on the agenda boxes that you saw a sample of to present new information, or take a very short period of time, 5 minutes, for everyone around the table or within a group in your seating area to stop and to go through some pre-planned questions, getting to know who's organized a diabetes strides walk before, who has done a fundraiser for their club and what did they do. Many of these, if you have pre-planned questions, you can do a quick roundtable discussion, share the information, and everyone is better informed about their Lions Club as a larger entity. Of course, we have people who come to network, and that began with Melvin Jones. He was a member of a businessman's club. He went to his meetings to network. But if we're following only the items on our agenda at the club meeting or a zone or district meeting, we know that there is often not enough time to network informally. By introducing an icebreaker, either at the beginning of the meeting or at a comfortable break time, we can give people a structured way to get to know each other, to network with them. I remember personally being quite surprised after 5 years in my club to realize some interesting professional backgrounds among the Lions in my club that I hadn't learned, not in 5 years of listening to the meeting agendas, because we hadn't been using the networking icebreakers very well. We've touched on already why we would want to do this, to create a positive atmosphere, to motivate, but really underlying all of this, the outcomes for our club are that we can strengthen relationships. When you socialize together, you strengthen those relationships, which will help to carry your club sometimes when difficult or contentious or hard decisions need to be taken. People will remember that they have a relationship beyond the committee work, that they understand and know each other. And that helps us to smooth through some of the difficult times. It helps when we work at being better informed of Lions topics, better informed about our fellow club members. It deepens the knowledge we have of how we can work together. And when we network and learn more about each other, we develop a new respect for diversity. One of the fun icebreakers that occurred in a club I was visiting, each member simply had to say what was their favorite holiday. By the time we were finished going around the club members, and there were maybe 25 in that meeting that day, we realized that people celebrated many different ethnic and religious holidays that the others in the room didn't know about, didn't understand, and deepening respect for diversity came out of a simple icebreaker such as that. So as a leader, I encourage you to think about not just the icebreakers that might be fun, but the audience that you're taking them to. If you know that your club is going through a stressful time and they need a little more humor or a little more lighthearted fun in the meeting, then take them an icebreaker that will create that. We recently did an icebreaker with a very small board group of about 12 people, and it was going to be a difficult meeting. The young chairperson decided to start with an icebreaker, and most people in the room came to that meeting tense, ready to debate their side of the issue. But instead, they found themselves starting with a fun icebreaker. Everyone was laughing before it was over. The tension had drained out of their bodies. The mood in the room had been lifted, and the discussion on this difficult topic went very, very smoothly after that. So think about the purpose and the audience, the desired outcome when you're planning your icebreakers. Now at this point, I'm going to hand it back over to AP, our coordinator. You may have some questions in the chat box or some hands that have been raised, and our panel, I'm sure, would be happy to respond to those.
Before we move on to the questions, we have a very wonderful announcement to make, and I'm going to draw in PID Sangeeta.
Thank you. It's been wonderful listening to all of you. And we have with us our Vice President, Brian Sheehan, one who has always believed in getting fun into all our meetings. So how can we not have him speak at this webinar? So Brian, you are on.
Well, Sangeeta, thank you very much. I appreciate this seminar and the work that you guys do in presenting these topics. What a great job that our presenters have done, Lion Cliff and Lion Wendy and Lion Patty and Lion Rajendra, and also the coordinators here. We all continue to get ideas that make our meetings better and our events better. And it's about change and changing things that we have going forward. It's about having positive atmosphere. It's about having motivation. And I'm a firm believer in icebreakers to get people comfortable and to have them open up a little bit. You know, you got to remember back to when you became started going to seminars and started going to events. I know I was nervous. I was very apprehensive, and this just encourages people to step forward. And I want to thank all the people that join the seminar too, to improve yourselves and make yourselves better, and especially for this organization, and again, having some fun. We got to bring a little bit of fun into our meetings, and starting out with an icebreaker is a great thing. And again, thanks so much to our presenters and our organizers and the volunteers for coming in and sitting in on this webinar this morning. Thank you, Sangeeta.
Thank you, Brian. Yes,
So,
icebreakers need not only get people together, but they can also, kind of like Patty said, sometimes you come in harried, you come in disturbed, but when you come into a meeting, you want to start focusing. A very simple one that we've used very effectively, I think is nice, is give everybody a slip of paper and tell them, write out something which is really worrying you, something which is troubling you so much, your biggest worry at this point of time. Ask them to write it on the piece of paper, put it in a jar, and once everybody is done, just tell them, your problems are safe with me. Concentrate on the meeting, and once you're ready to go, you can take back your problem. Something simple, but something which gets everybody, when you write it down, you're kind of done with it. So there are so many ways of doing things. It doesn't take time, but it just gets people to focus. So thank you, and now we're going to open it up for questions. PID, AP, are you there?
yeah. So thank you. And we'll go back to our panelists again. But before that, this has got to be an interactive webinar. That's what we've designed it as. So all the attendees, now it's open up to you. If you put up your hand, which I will see, and I do see some hands already put up, and I'm going to draw you in one by one, giving you the speaking rights, and you could then ask the question from the specific panelist that you desire, or else, as we said earlier, we will ask one of the panelists to respond. So the first hand that I see is from Anita Gupta. So Anita Gupta, you are unmuted. Please go ahead with your question. I have unmuted you. Hearing no one speak, I am moving on to the next individual who has put up the hand, and that is Jatinder Kaur. Will you speak, please? Seems to be an audio issue here too. And The next one is Mahendra Joshi. Narsimha Raju.
Hi, sir. My question is if any club is going to conduct business meetings and even our family members are going to join in this meeting, specifically if it comes to children, how we can create an icebreaker?
So I'm going to pass this question on to Wendy. Wendy, will you respond?
Sure, this is Pastor Sir Governor Wendy. I think, again, you have to look at the audience that you have attending your meetings. You may want the children to be, if you have quite a few children that come to your meetings, maybe they're in a group to themselves and they can answer a different set of questions or have a different exercise to get to know each other better. Or maybe you fold part of their experiences. Um, I've never had young children, so I'm trying to think of a good question or example. I've been around young children, but I think that's where your creativity needs to come in, and really the environment of your club meeting, of how to best incorporate them into one of the exercises or short activities that you do, or again have them do an activity among themselves while that part of the business meeting is going on.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And AP, this is Patty Hill here.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
We've had a number of opportunities where we've had small children, usually preschool age, because school children might be already engaged in other activities, but the very youngest children often don't like the question and answer with, except with the people they know best. And so what we have found successful with the youngest children who don't want to do the question and answer is to have them just do an action. Maybe they need to go and find some person who is wearing red today and bring that person forward. And then that person introduces themselves to the young child and makes them feel comfortable. Or maybe we have the children only stand up if they played soccer today. So they just do an action rather than being too shy to answer a question. I've watched some very gifted preschool teachers who use this sort of color identification, number identification, find someone who has 3 bracelets on, things like that the children can handle and can show with their action that they went and found the person instead of having to answer questions. And then it becomes a very physically active mixer as well.
Thank you, and that was very wonderful. And I think the individual who asked the question has really benefited. All of us have benefited from this. And the next question is from Agnes, somebody who's joined with just the first name. Agnes, I've unmuted you. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, thank you. Agnes Lakna, my full name. I wanted to ask, about icebreaker with putting your concerns on paper. Will people not be concerned that somebody might read their concerns and might feel uncomfortable writing such things down? And it being counterproductive rather.
Who would like to answer that? Rajendra, would you like to answer that? Pape? Okay.
Okay.
If it's not Pape, I think Pape is having some audio issues. So, Cliff, would you like to answer that?
Thank you, AP. I think the question is about drawing people into the group who are perhaps embarrassed or not in their comfort zone to be standing up and speaking about themselves or joining in the meeting. They may be new to Lions and not fully understand the procedures and the meeting matter. So you need to, as I said earlier, you need to be more, we need as Lions to be more inclusive and bring the people maybe a one-on-one approach and sit with the person who is a little nervous and just explain about what is happening within the meeting, what is happening within the club, how we run through our procedures, and put the person more at ease and assure them that they're amongst friends and like-minded people. Having assured them of this, I think you will find that they will be more open to and take away the embarrassment side, so they can be more fully participating in the meeting. I hope this answers your question, caller.
Thank you. Thank you, Cliff. And for the next question, we have Ronald Dunham. So, Ronald, I've unmuted you. Please go ahead and ask your question. Ronald Dunham. You're unmuted. Not getting any response from there. We move on to the next individuals who's put up the hand, and that's Saqib. Saqib, you are unmuted. Well, it definitely appears to me that some individuals put up the hand, maybe trying to find out what that button is all about. So, but that's good. That's good fun too. I will go back to the panelists at this point of time and ask them to step in with what additional comments that they may like to make at this stage. But before that, I'd like to join PID Sangeeta.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. You know, one very nice thing the panelists did speak about was that when we need to sit together, how can we make those groups? Can you share some ideas as to how we can make the groups within the meetings so that everybody is on a different table? So some ideas for that, which are fun, which are easy to do. Anybody would like to see it? I mean, Patty, Wendy, Cliff, anybody, Pape.
This is Patty. In my very own club, which is almost 90 years old, had developed some habits of people sitting together at the same time, always in the same places, in the same groups at the tables. And our tail twister one year gave each person, when they came into a meeting, a card from a deck of playing cards. So perhaps they had the 8 of spades or the 6 of hearts. And then they had to go and find the table where their place was matched. So they had to go find where the other half of that torn card was, and that was their assigned seating. And so it seemed very arbitrary. They had some fun trying to find their spots and determining who was going to be sitting next to them. And it lightened the mood and it reorganized the seating arrangement very quickly using the deck of cards. That's just one idea.
Okay.
This is Wendy, and I'd like to piggyback on Past Director Cliff's response to one of the questions that came in about having members be comfortable participating. And I think if you use activities at a club meetings, for example, and people become a little more accustomed to them, then they will become more comfortable with these types of activities. But a couple of the questions or examples that we shared are ones that kind of aren't a yes, no, or right or wrong answer. So really anything that someone shares there is no right answer. So when they're sharing their favorite color or animal or holiday, we're getting to know about people without the risk of someone standing up and being embarrassed because they're wrong. And so I think if this is not something that your club or a particular Lions group that you've gathered with in the past has done these type of things, then you definitely want to start with those safe type of activities where people can share more about themselves, but there isn't a right or wrong answer.
So one
I think
question
That's right. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yes, and another way, very simple, is just get, two people, of course, they form these groups, and other ways that we can introduce each other. Can you think of other different ways that we can introduce our partners, maybe our friends at the table, something that you would like to share with us?
we in our club have a 1 minute. It's supposed to be 1 minute, but it usually gets to 3 or 4 minutes, where a member stands up and tells us a little bit about their background and about what they have achieved in the past, up perhaps until they became Lions, and then what they have done whilst in the Lions family. And we find that to be very interesting because it opens the meeting up so that we are all Lions, but also we are all individuals, and we have all done and achieved different things with our lives. And it makes people, gives them the human side of the face rather than just being a Lion who you see at a project, or a Lion who is coming to a meeting perhaps for the first few times and doesn't know anybody else. And they can see then that people have similarities and maybe the same interests. And that way, I think what we need to do is we need to be more inclusive with our members and include them in all of our activities, not just the working side of the association, but also the social side is so very important if we want to have happy Lions who are serving in their communities. Thank you.
Okay, just a question. Most of the icebreakers that we've referred to relate either to a club meeting or maybe some of the training sessions. And this is my question to the panelists. What are your suggestions about some icebreakers that speakers could introduce very innovatively at district conventions? Now, those icebreakers would definitely have to be of a very different nature and very differently worked around with, because you don't break the conventions as such. But sometimes when the conventions are getting a little dreary and that excitement is beginning to kind of vanish and evaporate from those conventions, some kind of a very innovatively designed icebreaker can bring back that life and excitement back to the conventions. Any
You,
ideas?
you mean energizers? Yes.
Yes, kind of energizes, because I think dividing line is rather thin, but that needs to be done. So any ideas?
Patty here, AP. Quite often when you have a very large hall full of people and movement is restricted, one of the things we've done as a quick energizer is to have everyone stand up, turn around, odds and even rows to meet someone new who is seated behind them or conversely directly in front of them, and to talk very quickly, 30 seconds each, about something completely off the topic, starting with a question that will be given to the entire group, such as, how old were you when you started your first job and what was it? So their brains are suddenly taken into a completely different realm of thinking. They learn something new about a person they weren't interacting with before, and then they leave that aside at the signal and come back to the meeting. And that's a way to expand thinking and to give yourself a mental break. A second thing that we have done during the meetings when there has been a lot of information in a training meeting in particular is to insert a break where you turn and find one working partner, in that case, probably someone that you know, and you say, up until now, during this meeting, during this training, I have 2 things I already know I can use. So they begin to solidify knowledge. They say, this will be my takeaway, my key idea. This is what I'm going to do with what I've learned here so far today. And they share that with one partner only. And that's a helpful thing to do again later, as the day goes on. Stop the learning, stop the information sharing, and give people that opportunity to verbalize with another partner how they're going to use the information and what's the most important part of it for them. One partner may say, I was so impressed when I learned this about this app that I can have on the phone to help with my Lion app, perhaps, and they'll talk about that. For the other person, something else in the presentation might have been the most important key message, key idea they were taking away. And so now we see the diversity and they share their perspectives. So we've done that with very, very large groups, and it's been very purposeful around helping them expand their brains or focus a topic.
Thank you. And the next question again for the panelists. Supposing you were to be preparing for your presentation at maybe one of the trainings or in different parts of the world, would you really be choosing your icebreakers, in which case you have time to plan your icebreakers depending upon the culture of that location where you're going? So to be more specific, would an icebreaker, would you like to differentiate between an icebreaker that would work in Africa and that would work in New Zealand or that would work in Canada? Or do you think icebreakers kind of have universal applicability?
Yes, AP, I think that mainly icebreakers would have international appeal to all lions. Of course, in all things that we do, we have to be sensitive to different people's religious beliefs and the different cultures and countries. But on the whole, well thought out icebreakers work across the Great Divide. And I believe that, as we have seen many times in the past at the District Governor-elect seminar, where we have a mixture in our classes, we find that everybody joins in the icebreakers and they enjoy the experience because it takes them out of the learning environment for 5 minutes and puts them into a fun place. And if we're not having fun when we're doing our learning, then perhaps we're not learning as much as we could. So yes, I believe we can do that across the board and everybody will participate. Thank you.
PID Sangeeta, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Sangeeta, you're not audible.
You just go to the person next to you and you ask them to. Can you hear me now?
No,
Can you
Sangeeta,
hear
you're
me
not.
now?
No, Sangeeta, it's getting disconnected in between.
You
Please
take over,
speak.
AP. Maybe the signal is weak. Just take
This is
over.
better. This is better. It's all right now.
I'm sorry. It gets muted and unmuted. I think Papi wants to be unmuted. AP, would you please unmute him?
Everybody's unmuted. Papa is unmuted. Sangeeta, please go on.
So one that I have used is you do not speak anything. You turn to your partner and through actions, they must tell you one thing about themselves. For example, you just point to your wedding band and say, okay, and you say, I'm married, so that person knows and has to speak up and says she or he said that he or she is married. Something like that, as simple. Or maybe just point out in actions you've got to show. So it's very simple, it's fun. Sometimes you say something, you mean something, but somebody understands something else, and it kind of gets everybody into a jovial mood. So it's fun to do. So there are so many ways that you can break ice, and what's important is that every meeting must be a fun meeting. Every meeting must be a participative meeting. Every meeting must have a result. So whenever we feel that things are getting very tough, or not getting as exciting as you would like it to be, maybe it's getting a little too heavy, that's the time, if the tail twister can come in and do an icebreaker, that would be the key to a good meeting. So no doubt, trainings, seminars, conventions, conferences, all need icebreakers. Every kind of meeting needs an icebreaker, short or long, depends upon the kind of meeting. So today's panelists have done a fabulous job of sharing with us their ideas, their ways that they have worked, and each one is an accomplished presenter. So we have been so fortunate to have Cliff, Wendy, Patty, and Pape with us today, sharing their experiences with this wonderful international group that we have as an audience. It's been a pleasure getting back these webinars, and as we are ready to close, we can just tell you that this webinar has been recorded and it will be available in a couple of days, maybe by Tuesday, on leadersacademy.org. The next webinar is on 28th September, and please watch out for the emails. Watch out for more information about about these webinars. And if you have any suggestions, any ideas, if you would like to participate as a panelist, feel free to get in touch with us, and we'll be more than happy to have you in. We want diversity, we want new leaders to come in. Most importantly, we want to share ideas. So before I sign off and ask AP to do this final thanks to our panelists, I would like to myself to thank each one of you for joining, and of course our panelists. Over to AP.
Well, thanking everybody, thanking the panelists. This webinar is a little different from doing it at a seminar. We cannot reach out with a small token of appreciation, but all that we can say is thank you very much. You have always been supportive, and you were so wonderful, because this may look to be very simple, this may look to be very easy, but to be speaking about webinars and providing the understanding behind planning the webinars, planning the icebreakers, the kind of icebreakers, linking them to the different kinds of meetings and the purposes that they need to serve within a specified time frame. I think these are very critical and crucial issues, and they have been brought up so very well, so very lucidly, and with such clarity by all the presenters. Thank you very much. Thank you, Vice President Brian, for your participation, for your cooperation always, and thank you, the attendees from all parts of the world. We sign off now, and the next webinar, as PID Sangeeta said, 28th September. You will receive the mails, and once you do receive the mails, please feel free to pass on the mails to as many Lions as you wish in your club, in your district, in your multiple district, anywhere, because this is basically a platform for the Lions of the world to have open conversations on issues and topics that concern all of us in all our 49,000 clubs. Thank you very much, and a good day to all of you.